Upanishads, Mundaka Upanishads, October 20.
Yes, absolutely.
Today I could give you the assignment of writing a paper. The subject can be, what are the features of the Upanishads that you have studied that have appealed to you? It can be about 3 to 4 pages, and you will kindly bring that paper next week, Tuesday, when you come. Is it all right? So that I could hand over the papers after discussing with you the week after, which will be the last class.
Isn't this next week is the last class?
Next week you are handing me the paper. We are having a class.
Yeah, that's the last class.
Well, last class for reading the texts. So November 3rd will be the last date on which we will meet, where I will discuss your papers with you and round up the discussion and then hand over the papers. Have you any other suggestion?
We have a paper for you today also, the one we wrote.
That's
the
the
same
way
one.
I announced it before I did.
Would you like it today?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So that next time we can do some. You have brought, is it? Very good.
Is it the same one?
Same one, same one. Why not give me?
This class we did announce to be at the papers this week.
I see. Yes.
Some of us have to wait today.
Yes. So before I go, I collect them from you all, whosoever. I think it is good for me that way. It gives more time.
Those who, you can bring next week, but those who have already brought in.
They need not write another paper. They can give what they have given.
Right. But I don't think everybody
It
has
doesn't
their
matter.
papers ready,
Well-
Unless they wish to improve upon the papers that they have.
No, it will take time. Better as it is. I will improve upon them. Now, to come to the
Is it very much? I can watch it if I want.
Chapter 2, Section 1. This is that when they put capital T, that, it means the reality, Brahman, the truth of things. This means this, all that you see in front of you, this world, this universe, as from one high kindled fire thousands of different sparks are born and all have the same form of fire, so, O fair sun, from the immutable manifold becomings are born, and even into that they depart. This is a very important portion in the whole Upanishadic literature, because it clearly enunciates that this world, this universe, is not a creation by a creator. it is not a mistake or whatever that has somehow happened. It is what is called an emanation, as from a fire many sparks come out. So all these worlds have come out from a blazing fire of the Spirit, and they have the same character of reality as the original reality from which they have come out. This theory of emanation is also the theory of manifestation. What is in the reality, that is manifested. So there is the same nature between what is what is emanated and that from which things have come out. Manifold becomings. The fire is the being, the sparks are the becomings. He, the divine, the formless spirit, even he is the outward and the inward, and he the unborn. He is beyond life, beyond mind, luminous, supreme, beyond the immutable. This is to emphasize that the divine reality is not only within but also without. There is no distinction in that consciousness of what is out and what is in. This world of life and mind is changing, mutable. Behind the mutable is the immutable. Many Vedantic philosophies say that the immutable is the highest, the mutable, changing, is lower, and the immutable is the higher. But here he says, supreme, beyond the immutable, beyond both the mutable and the immutable is the supreme. Life and mind and the senses are born from him, and the sky and the wind and light and the waters and earth upholding all that is. Here is a concept that the earth is something fundamental. It is the earth that supports all that has come to be. So earth is foundational, earth is central to the manifestation. Fire is the head of him, and his eyes are the sun and moon. The quarters his organs of hearing, and the revealed Vedas are his voice. Air is his breath, the universe is his heart. Earth lies at his feet. He is the inner self in all things. This is a description, a poetic description of the cosmic person. the divine embodies himself as a person of cosmic dimensions, and the sun and the moon are his two eyes. His head is the fire from which everything has come, and east, west, south, they are his hearing, because you always hear, their sound pervades the quarters. And the wisdom of the Vedas are his voice. The air that you all breathe is his breath. And here important, the universe is his heart. The universe is not something inferior or a falsehood or a lie, but it is his heart. This is totally contrary to the Shankara conception that this earth is an inferior reality. Earth lies at his feet, Padbhyam Prativi. Earth is his footing. Another translation, earth is his footing. So without this footing nothing can last. So earth has an importance that is basic. From him is fire, of which the sun is the fuel. Then rain from Soma, herbs upon earth, and the male casts his seed into woman. Thus are these many peoples born from the spirit. Explains in terms of images how all these different types of beings, different types of emanations like plants, rain, all these come. They are not all to be taken literally, but metaphorically. From him are the hymns of the Rig Veda, the Sama and the Yajur, initiation, and all sacrifices and works of sacrifice, and dues given, the year and the giver of the sacrifice and the worlds, on which the moon shines and the sun. Every category of existence, of becomings, they are underlined as deriving from this cosmic person. And from him have issued many gods. The gods are also emanations of the Supreme Godhead. They are what may be called the cosmic functionaries, carrying out their respective assignments, and demigods, less than the status of gods, what you may call angels, and men and beasts and birds, the main breath and the downward breath, rice and barley, ascesis means austerity, faith, truth, chastity, and rule of right practice. These are the basics of spiritual life. Ascesis, austerity, focusing of energies, faith, truth, a basic truth, chastity, purity, and rule of right practice, not wrong practice or mixed practice. Before you practice anything, you must make sure that it is the right practice. I explained last time how, corresponding to 7 levels of existence, there are 7 powers, there are 7 flames. So here, the 7 breaths are born from him, and the 7 lights and kinds of fuel, and the 7 oblations, and these 7 worlds in which move the life breath set within, with the secret heart for the dwelling place, 7 and 7. All these categories of 777. They are all governed from the secret heart of things, where the reality is deposited, established. From him are the oceans and all these mountains, and from him flow rivers of all forms, and from him are all plants and sensible delight, which makes the soul to abide with the material elements. Here note that it is a clear declaration that it is delight that makes the soul stay in the material elements. The soul inhabits material forms, our bodies, because of delight. It is not out of compulsion, but the soul takes joy. Then he sums up all that he has said. The Spirit is all this universe. That means the Divine is all this universe. He is works and ascesis, and the Brahman supreme and immortal. O fair son, he who knows this, hidden in the secret heart, not only your secret heart, but in the secret heart of all things. One who knows that scatters even here in this world the knot of ignorance. Ignorance ties itself into a knot, keeping us bound to the superficies of things, making us miss the core of truth. But if one knows that reality in the hidden heart, secret heart, that knot is automatically scattered, that is loosened. Manifested, it is here set close within, moving in the secret heart. This is the mighty foundation, and into it is consigned all that moves and breathes and sees. That is the great foundation here, know as the is and is not, the supremely desirable, greatest and the most high, beyond the knowledge of the creatures. That this what is set inside is both the is and the is not. Now is not, it is not a negative conception. It cannot be determined by the statement of yes, is. It is something more than that. So the reality escapes determination. If you say it exists, well, even the word existence limits it. So you say it is non-existent. Non does not mean the opposite of existence, but beyond the determination of existence. That which is the luminous, that which is smaller than the atoms, that in which are set the worlds and their peoples, that is, it is the infinite in which all the worlds are set, but it is also the infinitesimal because he says it is smaller than the atom. That disease, it is Brahman immutable. Life is that. It is speech and mind. That is this, the true and real. It is that which is immortal. It is into that thou must pierce, O fair sun, into that penetrate. That is, with the concentration of your consciousness, you must pierce into that reality, plunge into that reality. It is not by mental reasoning, analysis, that you can understand or identify with the reality. It is by penetration, by entering into it in a concentrated way, that you can know it. And this is a very important verse. Take up the bow of the Upanishad. Now how to penetrate? So he gives the whole imagery. There is a bow, there is an arrow, and he describes, take up the bow of the Upanishad. The Upanishad is the bow, that mighty weapon. Set to it an arrow sharpened by adoration. Draw the bow with a heart wholly devoted to the contemplation of that. Before you can draw the bow, you must contemplate, and the heart must be completely devoted to that contemplation. And O fair sun, penetrate into that as thy target, even into the immutable. So the seeker is the person who holds the bow. The arrow has been prepared and shaped, sharpened by adoration, devotion. And the strength with which the bow is drawn is wholehearted contemplation. And when you leave that arrow, it penetrates into that reality, into the Brahman as its target. Now another imagery to specify. Upanishad means there are so many Upanishads. So he says, Om is the bow, Om is the bow, and the soul is the arrow. The soul must be sharpened with adoration, dedication, and that even the Brahman is spoken of as the target. That must be pierced with an unfaltering aim. The aim must not waver. You must not be distracted. One-pointed aim. One must be absorbed into that as the arrow is lost in its target. The arrow that is discharged is lost in the target. So, you too, with unfaltering aim, must be absorbed in that which is thy aim, which is thy target. Now this, if you repeat it to yourself, think of that imagery. That itself creates the power, the force, shaping your consciousness into a direct agent to be absorbed or to absorb you into that reality. These are what are called the mantras of the Upanishads. They are not merely poetry, not merely metaphors, but they answer to a deep experience of the rishis who have formulated their vision, their experience in words that are living and can communicate the experience to one who reads it. He in whom are inwoven heaven and earth and the mid-region. Heaven, that's the mind. Earth, that is the physical. Mid-region is the life region. And mind with all the life currents. Him know to be the one self. Other words, put away from you. This is the bridge to immortality, where the nerves are brought close together like the spokes in the nave of a chariot wheel. This is he that moves within. There is he manifoldly born. Meditate on the self as Om. The self, the reality that underlies everything. Meditate upon it as Om. And happy be your passage to the other shore beyond the darkness. Darkness is ignorance. The omniscient, the all-wise, whose is this might and majesty upon the earth, is this self enthroned in the divine city of Brahman, in his ethereal heaven. Now, the divine city of Brahman is not somewhere on the top of the sky. It is within the heart of the human being. Deep within the heart, there is what is called the inner sky, which corresponds to the outer sky. And in that, there is the city of Brahman. That is, God abides in the secret heart of every creature. A mental being, leader of the life and body. This underlines the position of the Upanishads in making the mind leader of life and body. That is, mind is the leader of life energy and physical energy. Has set a heart in matter. In matter he has taken his firm foundation. Matter is important. Though mind is the leader, matter is the foundation. By its knowing, the wise see everywhere around them that which shines in its effulgence, a shape of bliss and immortal. When the wise see that which shines in its effulgence, the knot of the heartstrings is rent, This is a very important conception of the Upanishads, that there are many knots tying us at various levels to the past, to ignorance, to devious functionings. And the central knots of these many knots, they are in the heart region. And whatever you may do by way of learning, by way of understanding, these heart knots, hard knots, they cannot be cut only by learning, only by austerity. They are rent only when you behold that effulgent reality. A grace ensues, and it is only as an act of grace that these knots of the heart are cut asunder. Human effort cannot undo these knots. And when these heart knots are cut, all doubts die, and all the past karma vanishes. Man's works are spent and perish when he is seen that which is at once the being below and the supreme, because immediately you realize that the supreme and your own being are the same. In a supreme golden sheath the Brahman lies. Deep within us there is a golden sheath, a sheath of light. Gold represents truth, untainted truth. And the Brahman, the reality, lies in that supreme golden sheath, stainless, without parts. It is always whole. A splendor is that. It is the light of lights. It is that which the self-knowers know. And when you realize the Brahman, that splendor, you see that light is not the light of the sun or the moon or the stars. This is a famous verse. He says, there the sun shines not, and the moon has no splendor, and the stars are blind. There these lightnings flash not, then how shall burn this earthly fire? All that shines is but the shadow of his shining. All this universe is effulgent with his light. So he is self-luminous, and because of his luminosity, that the sun, the moon, the stars, the earthly fire, they all shine. All this is Brahman immortal, not else. There is nothing beyond Brahman, outside Brahman. Brahman is in front of us, Brahman behind us, and to the south of us, and to the north of us, and below us, and above us. It stretches everywhere. All this Brahman alone, all this is Brahman alone. All this magnificent universe. This universe is magnificent. It is not sinful. It is not false. It is splendorous because it is Brahman itself. This is the unequivocal declaration of the Upanishads that matter is spirit. Spirit has robed itself in matter. All this is Brahman extended. You can ask me some questions now before I continue the next section. Surely you must be having some questions.
Would you say a little bit more about the inner sky and the heart, what that means?
Yes. When you plunge into yourself in meditation, you get across this physical range, physical layer. Then you feel the life region, life energy. Then you feel all thoughts and mind, emotions and things. So if you can traverse inside, then you come to a very fine ethereal region where things exist and they do not exist. Very subtle. And there you become aware of a soft light. There is an extension where one feels as if one is in the sky, floating in the sky. And there, in that sky of the heart, it is called Hridaya Akasha in Sanskrit, the sky of the heart. There, in some other Upanishad, it is described how there is a lotus. And in that lotus is the city of God. Lotus represents a blossoming consciousness. And there you see the abode of God. These are all symbolic till you see it actually. Till then you treat it as symbols. Thereafter, symbols, images melt into reality.
This is so mundane that I feel so embarrassed to ask, but how do the scholars treat the obvious misery in the world when we are talking? Of course we are blind to what is really splendid in the universe, and of course we are blind because we don't know what God is and what is truth. But how do they deal with that on a practical level?
Scholars can never treat it with it. You see, scholars themselves will suffer if they try. It is only mystics, spiritual practitioners who glimpse that reality, who taste something of that underlying bliss. They see why there is pain, why there is suffering. It is all due to a certain twist in our vision, our consciousness, our way of life. In the Upanishads, there is a passage the vast is happiness, the small is suffering. When you limit yourself, when you limit your vision, limit your area, you have to guard yourself from everything else. So every contact impinges upon you as foreign. You shrink. You try to avoid. You suffer. But once you come out of this wall of division, wall of ego, you are one with the universe. Every contact is blissful. Every contact is joyous. So it is in certain moments of self-release that mystics, spiritual practitioners get a glimpse of this truth and they hold to it and follow that till they get a footing in that bliss, ananda, that is underlying the whole universe. So there is no way except to expand our consciousness, enlarge ourselves. Only then will we see that all this suffering and pain and misery was self-inflicted upon us.
I was wondering if perhaps this is sort of a personal question, you may not want to talk about this, but I was wondering if you may be able to discuss some of your experiences using the Upanishads for your personal development and all. If you could describe any part of that, I was wondering what it is.
You see, I understand the Upanishads only because of experience. It is not that I get experience by reading Upanishad. I see. Because there has been some experience, it lights up the passages here. Ah yes, this is that. So that is how Sri Aurobindo, as I would be explaining in the other classes, he found Vedas, Upanishads, Gita, Tantras, all confirming his experience, corroborating his experience. So I always found that when you are on the surface level, you are like a football, tossed here and there by circumstances, by the moods of people, by successes and failures. But if you can detach and take a position behind, then nothing matters. Everything just passes, leaving you as you are. Now that is the first step. It is what you may call stoic equality. The next step is, when that equality is established, every contact becomes joyous. Even what strikes you externally as pain, suffering, it yields a joy. There you see the heroine or somebody suffering, and you shed tears, you identify yourself, shed tears, but the very act of shedding tears, you enjoy it. What passes for suffering, it evokes feelings of enjoyment. Why? Because you are not you are not one. Something knows that you are not one. You are not really suffering. Once that identification with suffering is not there, then it doesn't involve pain. So there was a great sage in India called Ramana Maharshi, and he had a tumor And when it was being operated upon, he did not take anesthesia, he just held his hand and they operated. So some foolish disciple went to him afterwards, does it not pain you? Then he said, there is pain but no suffering. You see, pain is a physical phenomenon. Suffering is psychological. So he experiences it as pain, but there is no suffering. Pain is sensational, suffering is psychological.
Very good distinction. Yes. I have one question.
Yeah.
A little bit about the analogy. It's been given many times, the fire that you said that, the
Yes.
fire, the blaze.
Yes.
And we like the sparks
Yes.
come out of the fire.
Yes.
Now that makes me think the sparks that always come out of the fire is outside of the fire.
Yes.
But if we are spark, that means we are outside of the, that makes that supreme being kind of finite, doesn't it? Because if we are outside of that being, that Brahman or the supreme being, which,
It is Brahman, the infinite itself,
but if we are out,
that becomes the finite. Yes.
we are finite.
Yes.
But then if we are outside of the Brahman,
Yeah.
doesn't that limit the Brahman?
It is self-limitation, it's chosen limit.
Limitation.
Yes. It is, he chooses.
He chooses to be limited,
Limited.
by the neutral
Yes,
being.
yes. When you are now sitting here, you choose to be a student of this class. Keeping aside you are being the director or the head of this institution or whatever it is. You choose to be just a student. You can always recover your status. So this is called self-limitation. God is not bound to be always unlimited. He can choose to be limited. It is a sign of his supremacy that he can play at being bound. He can limit himself. Yes. It is only the infinite that can finitize itself. And a spark remains finite till it joins back its parent fire. So, we are limited as long as we do not recover that identity in our consciousness. But we all share that nature of fire. That is what is meant by saying where man is essentially divine. Essentially, not factually. Factually, there are many undivine things. But because we are essentially divine, these factual undivine things can be unlearned.
I have a question. Vivekananda, he wrote somewhere that in his whole life he met about 20 really great men that self-realized men. And looking at the Indian sages and saints, we see that there are relatively very few people who experienced all that is written in the scriptures. And I'd like to ask you, does that mean that there are some people specialized in some sense and that they experience everything that the scripture is talking about just as a token of the truth of the scripture?
Yes. Yes.
But there are a lot of common people in the crowd, not very much, but there are a lot of common people equally enlightened among the crowds? Or does that mean that really for 4 billion people there are really some tens that really go to that height, I mean, that realize that?
It is true that the people who have realized these experiences are few. But those few are responsible for the faith in the common people in these truths. Because almost every Indian, sometime or other, meets somebody who has realized this truth. And not all of them advertise themselves. Not all of them, put on the garb of sage or a sannyasin or those red robes and all that. They pass off to be ordinary householders, working as clerks, working as anybody, school teachers. But those who know them know. So these things you will find more in India than in any other country. It is not that everybody in India is spiritual man or God realized. So it is a very facile generalization to say India is a spiritual country. It does not mean every Indian is a spiritual man. But there are people who testify to the truth of the scriptures in their lives. But it is also true that each person exemplifies one experience. There are very few, like Sri Aurobindo, who combine many experiences in their one life. Usually, they realize one line and stick to it. But nowadays, the time spirit is holistic, total, and more people are coming up who are realizing more dimensions of the reality. I have met in the West also some people who have realized like that, but they are not proclaimed, but in their personal lives they are very evolved, highly spiritual, almost touching that,
Would you say that a community, a righteous community, this creates a propitious ground for the appearance of these those exceptional
Yes, that is true. You see, when there is an environment of seekers, aspiring, believing in God, trying to live a God life, that creates a favorable ground for the efflorescence of such people. But it is also true that most of these people in the world in history, they have come up in ordinary surroundings, and after they have realized, communities have grown up around them, helping others. But there what happens? The sin of righteousness develops. Righteousness, that is, they begin to feel we are superior, we are a special brand of people, we have something to teach everybody, other people are inferior to us. Now this, what I call elitism, or what you described as righteousness, that is unspiritual and that is suicidal. So a real community has humility, not a sense of superiority. wherever the sense of superiority has come, that has been the end of things.
Right before the down.
Yes, yes.
That was one of the things that I got a sense of, it disturbed me about some of the Indian philosophy and all, is that there seemed to be a big distinction between, in quotes, the common men who live their lives sort of unconscious, and in quotes, people who are thinking people or whatever. And I personally find it very distasteful. I don't, like I said, it bothers me sometimes to see that. I just see it as maybe people are different and stuff,
No, actually, you see, from a distance, when you read in books, you think the Indian society is like that. But if you really see in life, there are no such distinctions. There are people of knowledge, people of experience in the very common state of life. And in learned people, there are people who have no spiritual consciousness. So the spiritual enlightenment is spread at all layers. There are no such thing as common people and spiritual people. You will find a spiritual man sitting at the corner of a road, talking to people, begging food because he won't earn, people feeding him. He will have ordinary clothes. He will be an ordinary man. A spiritual man will not sit in a temple or in a palace. It is only the rich people who have money. They set themselves separately. But that, I suppose, is everywhere. Isn't it? In India, a poor man can hope to live, but in America can't. If he falls sick, he is dead. But that will never be allowed to happen in a country like India. So the distinction between the common and the uncommon people is not valid in a country like India, where there is one body politic, one. And what we read, they are analysis of scholars for sake of presentation. They don't answer to life. They don't answer to life. Economic, yes, there are barriers. A laborer, a wage earner will always be in a separate category. And these exploiters will always perpetuate themselves in 100 ways. But as far as learning, spirituality is concerned, they are all everywhere. Maybe in small numbers. Yes?
It is my understanding from having experienced monastic life myself that mysticism is the same east and west. But I'm not enlightened, so I'm not pretending that sort of that's wonderful. The trouble is that in the West, there's no reason why any man, a carpenter or anybody, can't become a mystic. It's just that we don't. It isn't a common aspiration. And mysticism, as it is in the West, is not known either. We don't know our great mystics in the West. The common man, even the common Christian person, the people who have the orders of Christianity that have monastic ideals, they still don't know their own mystics. And so I think that, as I see the distinction in India, even the most common man knows what mysticism is.
Yes.
And admires it. And here,
and you are right, but yours is a young society. This is thousands of years old society. There is a certain maturity, and that is why it is widespread. 500 years hence, things will be totally different in America. And what you say is true. You see, there mysticism is in the lips of anybody at all levels. And you can always find a saint in every level, at every level. It is different here. And most of the mystics that we have known are either, in the Christian monasteries, Catholics, or in history we have known of them. We read their books and we say, yes, yes. There are some poets, like Walt Whitman, for instance. He is a mystic. Emerson is a mystic. So they have not come to light. It is a small community. You see, after all, though America is big, it is sparsely populated. In Russia, there are so many mystics. So there are, but they are more widespread there. In a country like China, country like India, they are more widespread.
I think it was very interesting. I come from a country traditionally considered to be Catholic.
Yes.
And there are many mystics. For each day of the year, you have one mystic ruling the day. But the distance, people don't see them as common people who changed.
I see.
There is a tremendous separation, and they see those people as superhumans. It's not for them. They are there to help them, but saints are not humans that became saints. But there are really, in Catholic countries, for each day of the year you have one saint or more than one.
More than one.
I see.
But certainly someone like Mother Teresa is pretty close to.
Yes. Yesterday there was a report that 8,000 Russians are going to be canonized, including the last Tsar of Russia and his whole family. Whether Rasputin is going to be canonized, I don't know.
By whom?
By some Catholic, some church, I think it was yesterday.
Yeah, but I think it is a political. It's a political thing.
I see.
Because the Orthodox Church in Russia, they don't get together, get along with this exiled church here. But it's for political purposes, because just because they were killed by the communists, that doesn't make them a saint.
Exactly.
Actually,
exactly.
That's the purpose.
That's how you stop sex from developing in Catholicism. Is that you create you include what is usually outside the church and sort of destroys the movement. That's something to look at. They've included. What happens is that a mystic pops up in the midst and develops some kind of an order, and at first it looks like what's going to happen is it's going to break away, but that's going to be dangerous to the church, and so the church will do is somehow, or when they canonize the person, what happens is it gives it it brings more people into the church.
Hoping to be canonized.
What's that?
hoping to be canonized one day.
Also in the West, the real true mystic, have been persecuted.
Yeah.
They were not been understood by the churches. They were threats to the established religious order. So they were being persecuted. So maybe that's another reason that they don't come out to the front. The people don't know. They have their experience and they keep it to themselves. That could be, that so far the history shows that so many true mystics have been persecuted.
It happened in Islam too. The Sufis.
Mid East.
The Sufis were burned. Some of them were burned alive.
Because they said, I am God. You see?
They said it was heresy.
It was heresy.
Yeah.
You see?
That's another.
As a matter of fact, Christ was basically killed.
Yes.
That's right. Because
That was the real kill.
it's a threat to the organized religious.
Yes. I think we can have a break, have some tea or whatever. and resume afterwards, after 15 minutes. Now, this is a famous parable, not exactly a parable, but a symbolic myth, which is many times drawn by painters, by those who embroider on curtains, designs, and that is two birds, beautiful of wing, close companions, cling to one common tree. Of the two, one eats the sweet fruit of the tree, the other eats not, but watches his fellow. So the bird which does not eat is on the higher branch. The bird which eats the sweet fruit is in the lower branch. The soul is the bird that sits immersed on the common tree. But because he is not Lord, he is bewildered and has sorrow. But when he sees that other who is the Lord and beloved, he knows that all is his greatness, and his sorrow passes away from him. The common tree is the tree of life, and the bird that eats and is unhappy is the human soul. And the bird which sits above is the oversoul, which watches but does not eat. This is also interpreted as in each one of us we have got two beings, two souls. One, the lower self, which is involved in the movements of nature and joys and suffers. Above is the higher self, which does not do that. And when the lower self looks up at the higher, its sorrow passes from it, because it realizes its identity with that, and it no longer cares to eat the bitter fruit of life. When a seer sees the golden-hued, the Maker, the Lord, the Spirit who is the source of Brahman, then he becomes the knower and shakes from his wings sin and virtue. Pure of all stain, he reaches the supreme identity. Both sin and virtue are stains. The sense of virtue gives a certain self-righteousness, and that itself is a stain. From a higher point of view, both sin and virtue are movements of ignorance. This is the life in things that shines manifested by all these beings. A man of knowledge, coming wholly to know this, draws back from creeds and too much disputings. He no longer indulges in philosophies, in cults, in religious performances. In self he is delight, His source of delight is in the self. At play in the self. His joy is in the self. Doing works, still he is not lost in the self. He works. But his enjoyment he draws from the inner self. The best is he among the knowers of the eternal. That is, he does not look outside for sources of enjoyment, for sources of happiness, but he draws that felicity, that happiness from within. He knows that that is an endless source of happiness. It just flows. The self can always be won by truth, by self-discipline, by integral knowledge, not narrow knowledge, not sectional knowledge, by a life of purity. This self that is in the inner body, it is not in the physical body, but deep inside of us there is an inner body, radiant, made all of light, whom by the perishing of their blemishes the doers of ascesis behold. When their taint falls off, those who consecrate their energies to the divine, they behold this radiant self in the inner body. And then he says, it is truth that conquers and not falsehood. This is taken as a motto by the government of India, national motto. It is truth that conquers and not falsehood. Because it is very fashionable to say in diplomacy, you can tell any lies. But it is a scriptural truth that ultimately it is truth that prevails and not falsehood. Falsehood may deceive for a while and appear to win, but that is only provisional. Satyameva jayate nandrutam. Not falsehood, but only truth wins. By truth was stretched out the path of the journey of the gods, by which the sages, winning their desire, ascend there where truth has its supreme abode. The truth is the path, truth is the goal, truth is the way. Vast is that, divine, its form unthinkable. It shines out subtler than the subtle, very far and farther than farness. It is here close to us. That is, it defies the mental conceptions of space and time. For those who have vision, it is even here in this world. You don't have to go to the paradise. You don't have to go beyond the heavens. It is here, he says. It is here, not only in this world, hidden in the secret heart. So it is within and without. But eyes cannot seize, speech cannot grasp him, nor these other Godheads. Not by austerity can he be held by works, not by self-deprivation, self-denial, nor by furious activity can the reality be won. Only when the inner being is purified by a glad serenity of knowledge, there should be that tranquility, there should be that serenity brought by understanding. Then indeed, meditating, one beholds the spirit invisible. It is invisible normally, but under certain conditions, your inner eye beholds that. External senses do not seize that. This self is subtle and has to be known by a thought mind into which the life force has made its fivefold entry. That is, life force, as I described, has 4 or 5 operations. From all sides, the life force must be drawn up in the mind, the aspiring mind. All the conscious heart of creatures is shot through and inwoven with the currents of the life force. Life force is throughout our nerves, throughout our system, and only when it is purified can this self manifest its power. And the only impurity that pursues life force is desire. Desire. It may be physical desire, it may be vital desire, it may be emotional desire, it may be even a spiritual desire. But a desire, a seeking to appropriate something which one does not have for oneself, that is desire. And when that is removed, life force becomes pure. Whatever world the man whose inner being is purified sheds the light of his mind upon, and whatsoever desires he cherishes, that world he takes by conquest. And those desires, here desire doesn't mean the normal desire, but aspirations. Then let whosoever seeks for success and well-being approach with homage a self-knower. That is, one can't normally know this, get this knowledge by one's own effort. He has to get it from someone who already knows the self. He has that experience, and in the very act of words, very sight, he communicates that experience, and words becomes just pegs on which to hang these experiences. Words are dispensable aids in the communication of spiritual experience or knowledge. He knows this Supreme Brahman as the highest abiding place in which shines out, inset, the radiant world. The wise who are without desire and worship the Spirit pass beyond. He who cherishes desires and his mind dwells with his longings is by his desires born again wherever they lead him. But the man who has won all his desire and has found his soul, for him even here in this world vanish away all desires. This self is not won by exegesis, nor by brain power, nor by much learning of scripture. All your scholarship, all your metaphysics, all your philosophy does not win the self only by him whom it chooses can it be won. To him this self unveils its own body. Now here is another fundamental tenet of the Upanishads, that ultimately it is the divine grace that delivers. The last step is taken by the grace. You can qualify, you can equip yourself, but you can't yourself open the last door. To speak of taking heaven by violence is an empty phrase. It never happens. You have to knock and wait, because he knows the hour. He knows when you are fit, when you are ready. Sri Aurobindo says, truth descended too soon might break the earth, in Savitri. So, the grace. But does the grace come arbitrarily? Sri Aurobindo says, before the grace can come, you have to build a state of grace. The state of grace has to be laboriously built. Purification, elimination of desires and egoism and impurities, development of humility, adoration, devotion, all these, they create a favorable ground. And only then does the grace act. It is also true that even for this effort, it is the prodding of the grace that pushes you into that effort. So grace works at both the ends, impelling you to go forward, to equip yourself, to build the proper climate, and there descending and opening the doors. So it is not by human effort that everything can be done. Only to him whom the divine chooses, the divine unveils its body. This is a very important doctrine of grace, and it is very similar to the Christian doctrine of grace. They have got in the Christian theology, they give equal importance to the grace. This self cannot be won by anyone who is without strength. A weak person, a weak of mind, weak of will, you cannot win that. Nor with error in the seeking. A wrong seeking, you may be intense, you may be passionate in your seeking, but if it is a wrong type of seeking, you won't get it. Nor by an ascesis without the true mark, that is, without the right type of discipline, you can't approach. But when a man of knowledge strives by these means, by the right means, his self enters into Brahman, his abiding place. Attaining to him, seers glad with fullness of knowledge, perfected in the self, all passions cast from them, tranquilized. These the wise come to the all-pervading from every side, and uniting themselves with him, enter utterly the all. Doers of ascesis who have made sure of the aim, you must have one aim, of the whole knowledge, the inner being purified by the yoga of renunciation of ego and desire, all in the hour of the last end, passing beyond death, are released into the worlds of the Brahman.